Hello guys, it's the Unclear 999. Today's video is about worrying for no reason at all. Even when life seems to be going well, when the bills are paid, relationships are stable, and opportunities are within reach. If you'll still feel a quiet, persistent worry in the background, it's as if our minds are hardwired to search for something wrong, even in moments of peace. This tendency isn't just irrational anxiety, it's a deeply rooted survival mechanism inherited from our ancestors who had to remain vigilant to survive. But in our modern lives, where threats are less about predators and more about social expectations, job security, and personal performance, that survival instinct often backfires. We find ourselves worrying about what might go wrong rather than enjoying what's going right. There's also the issue of control. When everything is going smoothly, a part of us fears that it's too good to be true. That calm before the storm feeling creeps in, whispering that disaster is only one phone call or one mistake away. Our minds equate stability with vulnerability, interpreting peace as the setup for a fall. It's why people self-sabotage just as things begin to improve, because chaos, as strange as it sounds, feels familiar. Worry becomes a coping mechanism, a way to mentally prepare for things falling apart, even if there's no sign that they will. The truth is, we worry because we care about our futures, our families, and the fragile structure of our hope. Even when life is stable, when the bills are paid, loved ones are healthy, and the future seems bright, many of us still carry a lingering sense of unease. It's a quiet whisper in the mind, a small knot in the stomach, reminding us that something could go wrong at any moment. This worry often doesn't come from anything tangible, but from a deep-rooted fear embedded in human psychology. Our brains, evolutionarily programmed to scan for threats, don't simply switch off when external conditions improve. Instead, they find new, subtler dangers to anticipate. This instinct, while once helpful for early humans surviving in hostile environments, becomes a source of chronic stress in modern life. Even in comfort, we wonder, how long will this last? What if I lose what I have? This mindset can turn blessings into burdens, as the fear of losing something good often outweighs the joy of having it. We've become prisoners of hypothetical disasters, imagining job loss, illness, betrayal, or failure, because we're so conditioned to expect problems. Ironically, when life is chaotic, our worries have focus and justification, but in calm periods, the lack of obvious danger gives our imagination room to run wild. We start to believe that happiness is a setup, a fragile illusion destined to collapse. So we brace ourselves emotionally, often ruining the very peace we should be enjoying. This cycle is worsened by societal pressures, social media comparisons, and the belief that we must always be striving for more. Even when we succeed, we question whether it's enough. Thus, even in our brightest moments, we shadow our own light with thoughts of darkness, caught between gratitude and dread. Understanding this paradox is the first step toward escaping it, recognizing that peace can be accepted, not just earned, and that worry does not prevent pain, it only steals joy. Even when life appears to be going well, when the bills are paid, relationships are stable, and opportunities are within reach, many people still feel a quiet, persistent worry in the background. It's as if our minds are hardwired to search for something wrong, even in moments of peace. This tendency isn't just irrational anxiety, it's a deeply rooted survival mechanism inherited from our ancestors who had to remain vigilant to survive. But in our modern lives, where threats are less about predators and more about social expectations, job security, and personal performance, that survival instinct often backfires. We find ourselves worrying about what might go wrong rather than enjoying what's going right. There's also the issue of control. When everything is going smoothly, a part of us fears that it's too good to be true. That calm before the storm feeling creeps in, whispering that disaster is only one phone call or one mistake away. Our minds equate stability with vulnerability, interpreting peace as the setup for a fall. It's why people self-sabotage just as things begin to improve, because chaos, as strange as it sounds, feels familiar. Worry becomes a coping mechanism, a way to mentally prepare for things falling apart, even if there's no sign that they will. The truth is, we worry because we care about our futures, our families, and the fragile structure of our hopes. This persistent worry, even in times of stability, can be attributed to our brain's evolutionary design. The amygdala, a part of the brain involved in processing emotions, particularly fear, remains active, scanning for potential threats even when none are present. This constant vigilance was advantageous in environments where danger was a constant presence. However, in today's relatively safe environments, this same mechanism can lead to chronic anxiety, as our brains struggle to differentiate between real threats and imagined ones. But while our minds may be naturally inclined to worry, we are not helpless against this instinct. Just as a muscle strengthens through consistent effort, the mind can be trained to resist the pull of persistent anxiety. The first step is awareness, recognizing when we are spinning worst-case scenarios in our minds, not because they are imminent, but because we've been conditioned to expect disruption. When life feels calm, we often anticipate the storm rather than appreciate the stillness. This is where worry takes root, in the gap between what is and what might be. However, we have the power to disrupt this pattern. One of the most transformative practices is gratitude, shifting our attention to what is working, to the relationships, moments, and accomplishments that anchor us. Gratitude doesn't erase uncertainty, but it grounds us in a mindset of abundance rather than scarcity. Similarly, we must reject the myth that peace comes from a perfect life. In truth, peace emerges from learning to coexist with uncertainty without becoming overwhelmed by it. Cognitive behavioral therapy shows us that thoughts are not facts. Many of our fears are assumptions shaped by old wounds or societal pressures. We can reframe those thoughts, rewrite the narrative, and train ourselves to respond instead of react. Ultimately, the reason we worry even when things are going well is because we're afraid of losing what we've gained. But this fear, if unchecked, robs us of the very joy we worked so hard to attain. To live fully, we must be brave enough to accept goodness without suspicion, to trust the moment, and to prepare our hearts not just for survival but for expansion. Even when life seems to be going well, when the bills are paid, relationships feel stable, work is manageable, and health is intact, many of us still find ourselves burdened by a nagging sense of worry, an anxious whisper in the back of our minds that something might go wrong. It is a strange paradox of the human condition. We often worry most not when we're struggling, but when we're finally beginning to feel safe. Psychologically, this happens because our brains are hardwired to detect threats in order to survive. It's a mechanism left over from our ancestors, who constantly had to stay alert for danger. In the modern world, where many of us don't face immediate threats like predators or famine, our minds instead latch onto abstract or hypothetical fears. What if I lose my job? What if they stop loving me? What if all this good disappears tomorrow? This fear of losing comfort becomes a source of emotional discomfort in itself. And for many, success brings unfamiliar territory, a place where expectations rise and imposter syndrome creeps in, whispering doubts about whether we truly deserve the peace or joy we're experiencing. That voice tells us not to get too comfortable, because comfort feels like vulnerability. Some of us have internalized the belief that happiness must be earned through suffering. So when life feels too easy, too smooth, we unconsciously create chaos or expect it because that's what feels familiar. Others may have grown up in unstable environments where good moments were always followed by something bad, teaching them to never fully trust joy. And then there's the societal pressure, social media, cultural standards, and financial systems all constantly remind us that we need to keep pushing, keep grinding, keep doing more even when we're doing enough. So instead of basking in the present, we project ourselves into a future filled with imagined obstacles, robbing ourselves of the very peace we've worked hard to achieve. But perhaps the most powerful reason we worry in good times is because caring deeply about what we have, our loved ones, our dreams, our health, makes us naturally fearful of losing it. Worry is sometimes love disguised as fear, and while it's natural, it's not always helpful. Living with the constant anticipation of loss prevents us from fully experiencing the abundance of now. True peace comes not from the absence of worry, but from recognizing it without letting it control us. It means understanding that life is uncertain, but that doesn't make it unworthy of trust. The challenge, then, is learning to sit with joy without bracing for impact, to let ourselves feel safe without sabotaging that feeling with fear. When we reframe worry as a sign of how much we care, we can begin to meet it with compassion, not panic. We can start to believe that good things don't always have to come with a catch, and that we are allowed to live fully in the light without waiting for the darkness to return. Because sometimes the bravest thing we can do is to let ourselves be happy and trust that we'll be strong enough to handle whatever comes next.